Does the perfect Fortnite sensitivity actually exist? Well, that's what I'm going to be putting to the test for the next 2 weeks straight. I've got 5 of the best tier 1 pros in the world, and I'm going to be copying their exact settings, putting them all to the test and figuring out what is the best combination at the end of the video. What's the secret reason why 50% of tier 1 pros use this exact sense, as well as what is the perfect double movement, colorblind, and edit settings to use to get the best performance. So to start off with, why is every single pro, including Peterbot, using this one sensitivity? So to start off on the mission to find the perfect sensitivity, who are we going to be copying? None other than Peterbot. He's obviously the best pro in the world, and I just got done spending 2 weeks practicing like him every single day, where I improved my fighting massively. But I never thought to actually copy Peterbot's settings. Luckily for me, I already have the Peterbot mouse, so the G Pro Superlight 2, as well as the Peterbot keyboard, which is the Apex Pro, and I play edit on release, so there's literally nothing I need to do to copy his settings except change my sensitivity. Peterbot plays on 6.4 X and Y, so basically a lower sensitivity. This is the super common sense that a lot of pros use, like Cold and Bolts also use it, as well as he plays on a little bit lower of a targeting sensitivity, down at 45%, leaving the building editing sensitivity at exactly 100%, so no alterations there. First thing that happened when I hopped into game using Peterbot sense is just my aim got so much better, but specifically my pump aim. Like, I was hitting so much more max damage shots as soon as I swapped to this sense. So if you're a player who struggles with hitting pump shots or, hitting headshots consistently, just swap to this sensitivity and you notice a massive improvement straight away with the 6.4 cents. The key thing is though, when you're playing in a lower sensitivity, is your mechanical level oftentimes got sort of left in the dust, because you're lowering your how quickly you can build and edit, as well as you're lowering how quickly you can sort of flick around on your desk and your mouse. It actually becomes a lot harder to do quick mechanical plays when you're playing on this lower sensitivity. So even though I was playing a lot better, I was hitting a lot more consistent shots, I just still felt a little bit too sluggish, and I had to play a little bit more passive and sort of let people approach me rather than just being able to quickly get onto their wall. And whenever I did go for a clip and sort of full try to piece somebody, they'd often hit a lot of damage shots onto me just because I can't block off angles quick enough using this lower sensitivity. Now for the next player we're going to be trying out is of course none other than Shark. Shark is probably the craziest fighter on EU at the moment, and it's because of a couple key settings. The first thing he has is he plays on a little bit of a higher sensitivity, so 8%, but he's also playing on 1200 DPI. This is basically like playing on 12% on a regular 800 DPI that most players will be using. He also uses 50% targeting, as you can see right here, which basically gives him a little bit of a higher ADS sensitivity as well. Then the next thing that Shark uses, as well as a couple of the pros I've noticed that Poyo and Cold also use this setting, is actually this graphics setting, which is basically 150% brightness that I'm going to be trying out, as well as Tritanope on the max strength. This basically gives your game a super washed out look where it's really, really bright, but the key thing is though, it is really easy to spot people in Storm, as well as spot people when they're sitting in a box. Now the final thing that Shark uses is of course double movement, and this is basically the default settings that give you the highest percent double movement that you can have, which is of course 75 forward diagonal, 90 strafe, as well as 135 backward diagonal. This is the strongest double movement that you can have. Basically means you're swinging around like crazy. So let me go test this out and see what difference it makes. Now the first thing I noticed when trying out these Shark settings is literally just how easy it is to be really quick and really mechanical on this higher sensitivity. And it definitely is noticeable when you watch Shark. Like, if you just watch his background clips of Shark, he is playing absolutely crazily, getting extreme full boxes on people, and he's doing a lot of mechanical plays that most pros on a slower sensitivity aren't even capable of doing anywhere near that quickly at the minimum. The next thing that I will say for you guys is I think most of you shouldn't be using double movement. I will say I think double movement is actually bad for 90% of players, because it basically means you're doing bad peaks and not thinking on what you're doing, and you're swinging into people way faster than you should be. It definitely can in some situations if you get really used to it, like obviously Shark is, increase your skill because you're swinging into peaks. It's harder for your opponents to hit you. But for most players, there's a reason why players like Peterbot and others don't actually use double movement. It's because it can impact how good your peaks are, and it results in you taking a lot of damage every single fight. Probably the best thing about these Shark settings is this colorblind that all of the pros using. So max strength Tritanope with 150% brightness. This thing is really, really broken for seeing people in Storm. Basically gives you wall hacks whenever somebody's in Storm. Rather than having that effect that sort of covers up the Storm outline, you actually get a way easier time of hitting people. So you're somebody that plays a lot of Zone Wars, or you're somebody that plays a lot of Reload but people are in Storm, or even if you just play a lot of Storm in general, I would really recommend turning this on because it makes it way easier to spot people. The only downside though is it does make your game look a little bit washed out, and it can sort of hurt your eyes if you're playing close to your monitor, since the game is so much brighter than usual. Now after trying out the Peterbot and the Shark settings, I was still noticing that I was a little bit get behind a pro's mechanical level. And obviously this wasn't to do with any sort of setting on my keyboard, but is most likely the sensitivity on my mouse. So what I decided to do is something a little bit crazy, but I found the highest sense tier 1 pro out there, which is of course Cami. Cami plays on an absolutely ridiculous 15% sense on 800 DPI. This is basically 2.5 times what the sense that most pros like Peterbot and Poyo play at around 6%, as well as is even double what high sense pros who are playing like 7.5, 8% are playing on. And the effect of this is you get an insane mechanical boost. However, your aim is obviously gonna be a lot more shaky. I tried this out for a full day and I literally just could not get a good amount of maxes in. And a really key thing is it doesn't matter what the trade-off of your mechanics and speed is. If you're not able to hit a shot after you do a retake or a quick edit, it really doesn't matter, and that's gonna be affecting you way more. So I decided that after trying out this super high Cami sense to swap it up and actually try a completely different strategy. Of course, we're not gonna be trying out Faxty sense on controller. We're gonna be trying out Arc. And if you guys haven't heard of Arc, I swear this guy is like Peterbot 2.0. So basically what he does is he plays on a super low sense, 3.5%. This is like almost 5 times as slow as the Cami sense we were trying out earlier. However, the thing that he does to compensate and give him good mechanics like he's got in these background clips is he whacks up his editing and building sense to 180%. So he's got this super low 3.5% whenever he's actually shooting his gun, so he's always hitting a max damage shot. But then whenever he goes ahead and actually uses his builds, he's got that Peterbot sense basically. He's got the 6.3%. And the effect that this does is he has got some of the craziest mechanics, like he's got those insane pro level mechanics, but then also he slows down his crosshair after he's done building and editing, and he's always hitting a max damage shot. Like at every single one of these clips, he's hitting a max damage shot on somebody, but he's still got those crazy mechanics behind it. So let me go test this out and let's see what we can actually cook up with this new saying. You're gonna pace, you're gonna pace, right? I can't be mom.
All he do is run around you.
Max!
No.
Max! Now, playing on a really low sensitivity, like under 4%, while using the building and editing speed to bump back up is actually not a bad idea. And there's a reason why Arc is so crazy and he's been described as the West Peterbot. However, the issue that I found is it is just way too slow, especially as somebody that likes to actually playing a little bit of a high sensitivity usually. I could hit really good shots, but my mechanical level was not there. And especially playing on a 6.4, I had the same issue that I was having earlier of that mechanical level. And also 108%, it feels a little bit too drastic to go from building to actually shooting a shotgun, and it can result, even being on a low sensitivity, having your crosshair in the wrong spot after you edit. So I had a crazy brainwave, which is basically to combine the best of both worlds. So what I decided to do was go back to the Peterbot sense of 6.4. However, I still wanted to have that sort of high sense mechanical building and editing speed. So what I did was I bumped up those sensitivity multipliers to 150%. This basically means whenever I've got my shotgun out, I'm playing on the regular Peterbot and the cold sense that we'll get to in a second. However, whenever I decide to actually use my building and editing, I get a massive mechanical boost, and I'm basically up in the high sense range of 9.6. The result of this is you have really ridiculously good shotgun aim. You're able to hit so much more shotgun shots. However, you also get a really nice level of mechanics where you're sort of getting a speed boost on every edit, every build that you do, and it's way easier to do things quickly. You can snap down and look at the floor really quick. You can go ahead and do a retake super easily, as well as soon as you're done doing any type of building and edit motion, you go straight back to a lower sensitivity, as much easier to hit a shot. Now, as I continue to grind and actually use this new sensitivity, I began to really like it, and I actually think you guys should 100% test this out. One change that I made to my overall settings is, again, no double movement, and I actually went ahead and swapped off that colorblind that I was using earlier that I copied from Shark. This colorblind is just way too washed out, especially on the Tri-Soap on Max Gen. It's way too strong, and what I'd actually recommend doing instead is just turning up your brightness to either 150 to 120%, and it is way easier to spot people at night, especially in reload or in an in-game situation where it turns to nighttime and it gets super dark. It's way easier to spot people, and especially spotting people through brick and wood, it's just so much easier when you have a higher brightness. I definitely recommend you guys test that out. Then for the sensitivity, the final tweak that I made is basically just lowering the editing sense from 180% that Arc uses down to a more reasonable 150%, and I stuck with that for a while. This feels so much nicer. Basically means that there's not too much of a drastic drastic difference between building and editing and actually going ahead and pulling out your shotgun. However, you still have a much faster and a much easier time. You don't have to flick around your arm as much to box up, and it basically means your mechanics get such a boost, as well as your aim still is at that really crazy level and that exact pro level that a lot of pros use, like Cold and Peterbot all use this exact 6.4% sense. Now, the final piece of this puzzle to find the perfect sense is, of course, the ADS sensitivities, basically your targeting and your scope sense. Now, we've tried out a bunch of crazy players throughout this video. We tried Shark sense, Peterbot sense, all of these different pros. We've tried out their sensitivities. However, my long range aim wasn't improving, and that's mainly because I've been changing my sensitivity rounds loads, which basically affects your aim. So I decided to go ahead and find the one pro with the best long range aim, and the person that came to mind is, of course, Cold. I mean, Cold, whenever you watch him, he's just absolutely freakishly good, and I realized a lot of that skill just comes from how good his aim is, especially at long range. He's always getting a really crazy high damage ratio whenever he plays the grand finals. Even in the most recent grands, he actually out-fragged Peterbot in terms of the amount of damage he was getting, and that just shows that he has got the ADS sensitivity absolutely perfected, and he plays on a very low ADS, a 0.3%, which is what I swapped to. Now, just this tiny tweak from 0.5 to 0.3% on my ADS sense made a absolute world of difference. Like, look at these background clips. I'm just pistol headshotting people from across the map over and over. I'm dealing so much more tags at long range. I'm basically killing people at the air and reload way easier than ever before. And this is actually one small setting I really recommend you guys try out. It might not sound like the craziest difference, but your gun just feels so much more sticky and actually able to hit the opponent when you lower down your sense as much. And especially if you're playing anything where you need to shoot people at long range, like reload, or any type of in-game situation when you need to get surge tags and like that, having a low ADS sensitivity multiplier is such a benefit for this, and it basically shows in Cold stats. He literally has such good damage ratios because of this exact reason. Throughout this whole video, trying out a bunch of different sensitivities and settings, there is one setting that we haven't tried out once, and that is, of course, Simple Edit, which just got added to comp. And there actually is one EU pro player who's using Simple Edit and making it look insanely good. The main benefit of Simple Edit is obviously it's way easier to do edits, but the key thing is you get insane crosshair placement. So whenever you're editing on somebody, you don't even need to move your crosshair, and you've basically got a max instantly lined up. So that makes it very easy to piece, as well as if you're a good aimer, that makes it very easy to get kills on your opponent. The game literally just does the edit for you no matter where you're looking, and this allows you to have perfect crosshair and hit 200 every single time. So after my conclusive testing, I can confirm Simple Edit is absolutely terrible and you guys should not be using it. This, in my opinion, is the best settings to be using in Fortnite, as well as the best sense. So first of all, turn off Simple Edit. That's absolute trash. Then make sure to click disable pre-edit option on. You do not want pre-edits on unless you're using them in trios and you're the one player in trios who has them on. Never ever turn this setting on. Basically just messes you up and gets you killed. Then also you make sure you turn on reset building choice. This actually makes a minor difference, even if you don't use the actual switching mode to actually swap between them. Then also make sure to turn on auto confirm edits. I generally think every single player should be using this, regardless if you think that you get more control with edit on release off. Turn this on. It makes a world of difference, but make sure to not make the mistake of turning on both. This is one thing that a lot of people do. You should not have this on, and you also should not have it on reset, since that messes up your ability to do right click reset to basically smartly swap angles on your opponent. Then in terms of the best settings, what I'd recommend doing is turning up your brightness to the highest level that you're comfortable using for a long period of time. If you can play on 150% brightness without hurting your eyes for 3 hours of a cup, that is absolutely perfect. But for most people, the sweet spot is between 115, maybe 125%. And also try testing around with Triton Up to see if you like it. In my case, I didn't. Now let's hop over to the sensitivity, because this is where I think I've discovered the best sense combo. So what you want to do is have the Peterbot, the Cold, the Poyo, all of these tier 1 pros who use the 6.4. You want that as your base sensitivity, and that is just basically just going to help you the most with hitting shots, even if you're not the best player. Just doing the sensitivity, I swear it just helps you hitting shots, especially if you're lowering your sensitivity down. Then one thing that Cold does is he has a very low targeting sensitivity, around 30%. In my case, I found 33.3 to be a little bit better. It's basically a third of the 6.4, so it makes it a lot easier to hit shots on people gliding and flying in. It just makes it way easier to aim compared to using on 50%, which still feels a little bit high. Then this is a really key thing that I learned from testing out the ARC settings, who won the FNCS on NA West, is use a percent modifier on your building sensitivity. For me, what I found works best is 150%, but this setting, a lot of people just completely overlooked it and thought it would be bad, which is what I did when it first came out. I didn't even bother testing it. Is absolutely nuts, especially if you're playing on a little bit of a sort of lower to medium tier sensitivity. Turning a building and editing sensitivity on literally just gives your mechanics such a boost and really helps out, especially with some of you can't sit there practicing and you can't throw your arm around like crazy as you're building, I would really, really recommend turning these on. And also, if you're still watching this video and you're on controller, you should be swapping off controller ASAP. It's just not the play anymore. I really don't think there's gonna be any controller players still left competing at the top level in comp, apart from maybe Reet and like 2 EU players. Controller is just getting left in the dust, especially when all of these crazy new settings are coming out on mouse and keyboard, which basically furthers the advancement of mouse and keyboard over regular players. And if you still don't believe me that this sense is the best, I got resub to finally convert after I was just hitting every single pistol shot, and this is what he had to say about the sense.
Oh my god. Oh my god, you've been pissed on so bad. Ah! Oh my days. I am fucking booger.
Reese,
if someone runs around
as
well,
converted to the DJ God sense for the
it might be.
Might be.
I can confirm that I have been converted to the DestinysJesus LTD God sensitivity 6.4 plus 150%. There you go.
Crazy stuff.
I've hit
Guys,
more bangs.
Make sure to like and subscribe for this crazy content and